2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee L vs Ford Explorer. All-American three-row SUVs compared. The SUV as we know it today was shaped by several distinct vehicle types. First came the original Chevy Suburban in the 1930s, a truckish and utilitarian van-like thing that offered multiple rows of seating. Later, the more mainstream car-based station wagon arrived, becoming the predominant form of transportation for families who needed 3 rows of seating, followed by the humble minivan in the 1980s. By the early 1990s, the long-running Suburban had morphed into what we know today as a full-size, 3-row SUV. But it remained a fringe player. The sport utility vehicle segment was instead mainstreamed in that era by 2-row, tallish 4x4 wagons, the most consequential of which were the original Ford Explorer and Jeep Grand Cherokee. In the years since they launched and immediately began taking over suburban driveways, they too have grown from 5-seat fun havers into proper 3-row family SUVs. They're enormously successful. The Grand Cherokee is Jeep's bestseller, and Ford moves more Explorers than any vehicle short of the F-Series pickup. So, in their latest incarnations, which of these all-American family haulers is best? In this corner, neither SUV is brand new. The current, 6th-generation Explorer was introduced for 2020, making a surprising change by shifting from a front-wheel drive, car-based platform to a rear-wheel drive setup, which is uncommon for this segment. A 2.3-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder carried over as the base engine, and Ford also introduced the 400 HP Explorer Street. For this comparison test, we gathered up the Explorer Street line, which builds on the almost entry-level XLT trim with interior and exterior styling cues from its more powerful sibling while retaining the humble Turbo 4. The Jeep is only 1 year newer, having made its debut for 2021. But it already rode on a rear-drive platform. Like the Explorer, it's offered in rear and all-wheel drive forms. Unlike the Explorer, which has offered a third row since 2002, the current generation of Grand Cherokee is the first to provide seating for more than 5 passengers. Jeep still builds a 2-row variant. The 3-row is slightly longer and technically called the Grand Cherokee L, similar to the Ford. The Grand Cherokee is powered by an engine that debuted with the last generation model. Though both power plants produce around 300 horsepower, the Jeep does so with a 3.6-liter naturally aspirated, no turbos, V6. For the streets, and the kids. As you'd expect, the Jeep isn't quite as efficient as its Ford counterpart. The Explorer is rated at 23 mpg combined compared to the Grand Cherokee's 21 mpg. That said, it's the Jeep that has the longer driving range, 483 versus 412 miles, due to its larger fuel tank, which is crucial for family road trips. Not that the Ford doesn't have other advantages on open highways. Both of these vehicles have modern driver assist tech that can reduce fatigue on long trips, but the Explorer's features are significantly more effective. Ford's adaptive cruise control system displays some unrefined braking, but the lane assist is excellent, confidently keeping the big SUV centered in the lane and requiring little input. The Jeep? Not so much. None of its 3 levels of steering assist is capable of keeping the 3-row centered in its lane. Instead, it bounces you off a lane line toward the opposite boundary and wrestles you if you try to take over. When you're the one driving, though, you may prefer the Jeep. The Explorer has overeager, jumpy throttle programming and a heavily bolstered steering wheel, an attempt to assert that the 3-row Ford is a sporty option, like it's dressed up as a real ST for Halloween. There is also some unpleasant low-frequency engine note augmentation attempting to hush any qualms about the Explorer's 4-cylinder engine. The ride is unsettled, causing some head toss even on relatively flat roads, and control is lacking, as if the body of the vehicle is half a beat behind your steering inputs. There's notable nosedive under braking, too. Ford's 3-row is slightly better when hustled, though not many folks do that with their families in tow. Its transmission is responsive, happy to downshift to keep the 4-cylinder in its power band. Steering is direct, but it lacks feel and is notably slower than the Grand Cherokees. The Jeep isn't perfect, either, but we prefer it. There's some body roll, but motions are one and done. It doesn't feel sloppy. We noticed occasional clunky transmission behavior at parking lot speeds, but it mostly stays in the right gear to keep the V6 on boil. The Grand Cherokee felt quick enough in the real world, due in part to its sweet, snarly engine note. But the Explorer is 1.5 seconds quicker to 60 miles per hour, reaching that speed in a quick 6.2 seconds. The Jeep's ride, though a bit busy, is taut and controlled, and despite a squishy pedal, its brakes are easy to modulate and don't induce nosedive. If you ever plan on a family overlanding trip, the Jeep will be a much better option, though that's hardly a surprise. The Grand Cherokee has two segment-exclusive features, low-range gearing and height-adjustable air suspension, that make it the clear choice for families interested in venturing away from pavement. Looking over the wide, flat hood, you're aware that the Grand Cherokee is one of the only vehicles in this space that feels more like a proper truck-based SUV than a unibody crossover. Ford's 3-row should be plenty comfortable for exploring a lumpy fire road or an easy trail to the campsite. More so if you opt for the off-road-ish Timberline model, but its capabilities are more limited. One potentially concerning note. Likely due to its nearly 500 pounds of additional weight, the Jeep takes almost 20 feet more to stop from 60 miles per hour. The Jeep can tow almost 1,000 pounds more, but would you really want to load it up like that knowing the braking performance? Interior interest? Of course, you and the family will be spending most of your time taking in the cabins of these vehicles at a more sedate pace, and there's an obvious winner here. The Grand Cherokee edges out the Explorer in design, ease of use, technology, and material quality. The materials used in the Explorer are hard to accept. At nearly $50,000, the Saint line's thin, cheap-feeling synthetic leather and tacky contrast stitching don't work for us. Thankfully, the seats are rather comfortable, a good thing provided you avoid looking at or touching them. Ford uses scratchy plastics throughout the Explorer. We could see the rough casting seam on the antiquated pop-up door locks, for example. At least the folks in Dearborn give us physical volume and climate controls, something we appreciated having in both of the SUVs we evaluated. Our test vehicle came fitted with an 8.0-inch touchscreen infotainment system, which would have been impressive 5 years ago but is decidedly behind the times now. Actually using the screen reveals it to be quick and responsive.